Welcome back to This is Freedom. If you were tuning in last Friday, June 12th, I sat down with my sisters for part 1 of episode 4. We discussed their experiences over 20 years ago when I was going through some tough challenges with my mental health in high school, and how we can go from fear of the unknown to having more knowledge of mental illness, and how it's important to stay and support your loved ones, even if you are confused and you at first hit onto the table like Sheryl did. We were talking about how mental illness has been seen in the Caribbean population. So here's a funny recap of that conversation.
You lock up in your room like if someone's depressed.
Yeah.
You know, they would just describe what they're doing, not like...
Yes, that's true.
Anything beyond that.
I don't think, not even so much to say that they weren't really diagnosed, but I don't think there was even an appreciation for this being an entity, like mental illness being a thing. Like being an illness.
Right.
Depression even being an illness.
Yeah.
Right.
We will be looking at how we find meaning and purpose today, and how breath can take you through some of the most overwhelming and painful parts of life. And then we explore the big question: is freedom attainable?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you both how you find meaning and purpose in life and your spiritual practices, so to speak, because we all have grown up with the same parents in the same house, but we've had different experiences and things that have led us to want to live life in certain ways. How do you find meaning and purpose? What's like really important to you, and what would you say is your spirituality today?
So by saying spirituality, what I mean is how people find meaning and purpose in relation to something bigger than themselves, and it usually involves a belief and connection to what people have called God, divine, universal energy, universal consciousness, nature, connection, and also the practices that we do to connect with ourselves, others, and this higher power. And it also involves an awareness to these things, an awareness that there's something more out there, and an awareness of this unknown.
I think growing up around Granny and Granddad was a huge influence, like you mentioned earlier. And one of, like, an example I can provide is if something goes wrong, Granddad might just say, oh, you know, that is life, you know, you gotta keep moving. You know, God is here with you, or, you know, they would say these things reflexively. And I think witnessing their spirituality really helped form mine, and how I now do a similar kind of reflexive thing and remind myself of the bigger picture. My spirituality right now is, I don't want to say rooted in nature, but definitely being in nature around big trees and looking at the sky and seeing the sunrise and the moonshine. Those things really remind me of my place in this world.
Yes.
And I have some of my stressors, or the things that challenge me emotionally and mentally, would be my work. You know, I work with a sensitive population, pregnant people, mothers and fathers and newborns, and so much is changing in their worlds. And sometimes I step into a home where there's a lot of anxiety, where there's a lot of uncertainty, and they're looking to me to fix it almost. And although I'm accountable to them and they're relying on me, I really find my peace with my community and other resources. And how people look beyond me. And another way that I center myself is through my yoga practice. And when I started practicing yoga in about 2017, it was really a way to work out and help my back feel better.
Right.
And it has grown so much since then. The yoga studio was one of the first places I went after Granny passed away. And it really helped me move through some of the deep and
Yeah.
really thick, potent feelings that I was having.
Yeah.
And I believe that our body can store a lot of energy. And
Oh, yeah.
there's, energy centers and chi and ways that things kind of get blocked up in the body.
Yeah.
And yoga allows me to move through that physically, and then also gives me the meditative space to be alone with my thoughts.
Yeah.
And also alone without my thoughts, right? Giving those thoughts less energy and reminding myself that things are temporary.
Thanks for saying that, Josh, because it really makes me think about our spirituality and our relationship to nature and earth and God as this energy that we carry, and the energy that we carry day to day in our interactions and with the things we have to remember and our schedules and supporting people. And Joshua, you're very good at that, at creating community and groundedness and helping people to know their power and advocating for themselves when they're in this stage where they're bringing new life into the world. And it's a huge transition for families to become parents, and you really help to facilitate that calm, through just your presence, I think, and your knowledge of what you do and your knowledge of woman and energy. And we can only take a certain amount of energy though too, right? And I like how energy, we have to make it flow, and it makes me understand yoga a bit more, because I'm not someone who practices yoga. I've always had the need to jump up and do HIIT or strength training, and I find yoga very challenging. Maybe that's why I don't like to do it. It may look graceful, but there's your body, your muscles are burning. It's not easy, but the need for energy to flow, I think that's a really important spiritual practice, is to not let things sit with us and to have them flow. And for me, a lot of the time that's through singing and through a praise and worship. I find energy just releases so much that way, and through releasing emotions and crying. Good cries are really healthy, you know? And so it helps me understand you too and your flow more, and why you do yoga practice. Because I think for me, it maybe provided more stress than I thought released. We're all very different though, right? What works for one person may not work for another person.
And there are so many styles of yoga. There are styles where it's not as physically challenging, and it's more sitting in postures for a long time, and then it becomes more mentally challenging, right?
Right.
But what I love, and this is kind of rooted in the whole Mother Nature, sky, water, all that, is our breath. Our breath is always with us, and it can be an important tool for nervous regulation.
Yes.
So there is no yoga without breath. There is no me without breath. There's no labor without breath. It's really such a powerful tool, but it's also this air that we're breathing in that has been around forever. And I have a science background, and I've looked at things at the biochemical level, and I think it's given me such an appreciation for this universe, for the God that put all of this together to function so beautifully and seamlessly, and for it to be so sustainable, and from ashes we come and ashes we return, and all of that. It's the science and the spirit of it all that keeps me going.
And they're not two different things. There's not a dichotomy.
No, there isn't.
With the science, for me, there's the beauty of God in the intricacies and every detail in our anatomy, or even in a snowflake, or seeing, the mother bird feed their little ones, and just I see both science and God really as the same thing.
It really is. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about our grandmother passed away before our grandfather, 2018. And then our grandfather passed away in 2022, right? And for me, that was a really big, because they gave us so much. They gave us so much. And through their love, their faith.
I don't know how they had so much to give, because they weren't just giving to us. They were giving to their community, exactly, to their children, their grandchildren, their cousin, the second cousin, the third cousin, the cousin's friend.
That's so true.
I can't speak for every grandchild, but they made every grandchild feel like they were the most favorite grandchild and most cherished grandchild. Just the love that they just exuded on everybody.
Their neighbors,
everybody. It just, and that speaks to their spiritual walk with God and you know, and the love that they poured out.
Because it didn't come from them. That love didn't come from them.
Exactly.
They were merely like a conduit or like a way for it to come into the world.
Exactly.
But what I wanted to say with that, with their grandparents, and after them passing, I felt like my faith became stronger because then everything that they left behind, the way that they addressed challenges, the way, like their thinking processes, like, you know, if I'm going through a hard day, I would hear Granddad saying something to encourage me, you know, or just thinking about how Granny worked through challenges through song, or how they prayed. And it's almost like they became stronger in spirit for me, and watching over us and just being a part of us became so strong. And I feel like my faith got stronger after they died.
Yeah. That's so true. For me as well, I think for me, I'm just so much more reflective than I was prior when they were here. I don't know if it's directly related. Well, so many things happen, but I think when I reflect on my grandparents' spiritual walk and their faithfulness and being steadfast, and you know, it definitely rubs off on me in the sense that I just feel. Yeah, I feel the Holy Spirit's presence in my life. I feel my grandparents watching over us. I feel the impact from all the prayers that they prayed upon us.
Yes.
I see the prayers being answered. I see their legacy growing, and I know it all points to God, like to just Him being so gracious on our lives, each one of us. I think, it's pretty amazing that legacy that they started and that is continuing from them. And that's definitely a huge part of my spirituality. I think both of our grandparents, they were always, we think of Granny as always being singing, but Granddad, he would be singing hymns, he would be humming hymns.
More so after Granny passed.
He would be, so much so.
Feel the air.
And so it's like everything, like they were singing scripture, they were constantly everything that was referencing back to God, or God willing I'll do this, or always being grateful, always our daily bread on the kitchen table, Granny locking us in the bedroom, making us memorize.
Locking us in the bedroom.
Scriptures and not even just scriptures, different, Catholic.
Anglican.
You're Anglican,
The Anglican.
The glory be and this and
Sings my song.
Yes.
My Savior God to thee. How great thou.
These are all ingrained in us. These songs and the meaning behind the songs that sometimes just hit us more at certain times of our life.
Yeah.
Going through something, or we're at church, or we're somewhere and someone says something or some word, and we just hear Granny's voice singing a hymn in our head. And it gives us a sense of peace, and it just reminds us of our place too. That they're gone and we're here now. One day we'll be gone too.
Yes.
And it's such an evolving thing, our spirituality. Mine, I can say for sure, it's evolved so much over the years, in the sense of just maturing and growing, being able to be solid in what you believe and your relationship with God, or your relationship with spirituality, and how you experience spirituality through all the different changes of life, through illness, through job loss, through going through education, through becoming a parent, through marriage, through divorce, through, and our spirituality is constantly evolving and growing, and even having more understanding, acceptance for the spirituality of those around us, that impacting our spirituality.
I was gonna say, I think that it's also become less legalistic. Like, you know, when we were early
Religious.
Christians.
Less orthodox.
Yes,
Orthodox,
less orthodox.
Religious.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I feel like when we were younger, it's more black and white. I remember just the way you used to think about... Not even just in terms of religion, in terms of like Christianity, but like our
right
expectations of people.
There's
Right? Yeah,
like how
like
things should or shouldn't be.
Exactly.
You know,
Versus...
what can and cannot, what should and should not.
What's righteous, what's not righteous.
What will and will not.
Yes.
What shan't and shan't not. Shall and shan't not.
You know, and then we grow and we see the gray and everything, and we learn to think for ourselves.
The discernment that you get comfortable knowing that this is where I should or should not do, or this is where I should or shouldn't go, or this feels right, doesn't feel right. And trusting that.
Yeah.
And knowing that it's not just a feeling, but it is our spirituality, it is our inner higher power of God, Holy Spirit. It's something that we need to be able to trust. Our guiding light.
Yeah.
Lately I've been looking out to the trees from the deck. Sometimes I go out there and I take a few deep breaths and, you know, I open my arms and I stretch a little bit. And the trees, there's so much wisdom in trees. And, you know, in indigenous cultures, they revere trees. And something I learned recently is in the summer, you know, the trees... Or in the spring, the trees start to bud, and then you have all these big leaves, and they look so lush and beautiful.
Yeah.
But that's not when they grow their roots. They grow the roots when they're going into this kind of hibernation.
Yeah.
So it's when they look barren that they're rooting down even more. So that in the spring, when the soil warms up, they can bloom even more than they did before.
And they can take as much from the soil.
Exactly.
So we have to take root and nourish ourselves with all the things that will help us grow in the future. We can't just be thinking of the present moment.
Preach.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
It's the times that we go through these hardships. We talk about when we talk about mental illness, and we talk about the acute, you know, presentations of different mental illness, and yours in particular, Michelle. And the challenges, and then you remind me about how short of a period of time that was. But such a significant time in your life, in the lives of those that loved you, and
still love me.
I knew what you were saying.
Did I say love?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Edit.
No, that's staying in there.
Those. Well, you're the boss. You're the boss. So, but yeah, these are short periods of time in our lives. Oftentimes, when we go through hardships, they come and they go.
Yeah.
But they're so significant, and if we allow ourselves to really extend our root system in those times, so that when spring comes, you know, you can just really learn from those situations and thrive off of those situations and grow from the hardships and just become this 100-year-old rooted tree,
a willow tree, Michi, you are
giving life to all, you know, home to the birds and the organisms, and just because of just being able to take root in those what seemed like barren times, but they really were. We're setting things up for a future of just abundance.
So, you know, we have these challenges and we take root. So how do you find freedom? What does that look like to you? What makes you feel free? And do you think you've achieved freedom in your life? Is it attainable?
Is it attainable? I would say I experienced freedom when I wake up and I just have a sense of gratefulness that I'm here, that I'm breathing unlabored. Not currently, I've been labored lately with this baby.
Yes.
But I can breathe unlabored. I am pain-free. My daughter is sleeping peacefully in the room next door, and my husband next to me. and I have money in the bank account, I have a job to go to, even if I don't want to go there that particular day.
Mm-hmm.
And I have freedom of speech, and
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
be who I am unapologetically. I think those are moments where I feel free and I have freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for me, that's my answer. Okay.
No, that's wonderful, because life isn't all roses, but I do believe there's moments we feel free. The choices that we have to make, we can make choices that help us to feel more free sometimes. And not to say that there's not circumstances or situations or things we can't control, but I think within that, there's still things we can control, so we can feel a sense of ease or just happy to be here, to be able to live life aligned with your values, to be able to move our bodies, and just to be grateful, having a sense of gratefulness and focusing on the things that are going well, things that you have control over. And so Joshua,
when do I feel free?
what does freedom look like to you?
What does freedom look like for me?
Yeah.
Freedom for me, I mean, occupational freedom is being self-employed and being able to set my own availability and schedule and to make time for my family and for myself, to be able to sense when there's been a little bit too much work and create more time for, what's the word I'm looking for?
Leisure?
Yeah, exactly. Creating more time for leisure. Freedom looks like practicing yoga with my eyes closed because the postures are so familiar that I just am in flow.
I was going to say that. Flow.
And my breath is just moving in and out of my body, and I'm just... It's effortless, and I'm not thinking, and it gives me a break from the stress,
Yeah.
It doesn't cause stress like it does with machines.
No.
It doesn't cause stress.
It can, absolutely. I was at a class on Wednesday with Mitch. It was a powerful class. Dan was teaching, and he opens the class by saying, all right, welcome everyone to this powerful class. It's meant to be challenging mentally and physically. And every time he says that, I'm like, oh God, because it's so true. It can be really challenging physically, and then your mind is almost at odds with your body. It's like, why are you doing this? You don't need to be doing this. Stop. Like, can't you get water? Like, your brain is saying all these other things. And
but I think there's like a higher force sometimes that has to put peace to all that. That's happening in your body, and that chaos or that energy.
Exactly. Because our body is designed for when it's feeling stressed to activate our sympathetic nervous system and send blood to our extremities and get us prepared for, fight, flight, or freeze. And that's why I always come back to this concept of breath, because once you activate your breath, you deepen your breath and you slow it down, you can switch back into that parasympathetic nervous system that's more for rest and digestion, and the blood is going to your core and you're finding ease, and that's a big way that I find freedom. Even when I'm like, oh God, this is intense and I'm stressed and it's for work, or I'm at a birth and things aren't going well, I take a pause to myself because I always have breath available to me.
I love that. You always have breath. You always have source available to you.
I love that. Can I tell you a story?
Yes.
Podcast listeners out there. I have a 21-month-old beautiful daughter. And for those of you who have experienced labor or have experienced someone being in labor, when I was in labor with this child, I never experienced this type of abdominal pain, cramping, pelvic cramping before. Just such a unique pain. I've had a lot of pain in my life from different illnesses and injuries and stuff, but this is just a unique type of thing. Not worse, just so different and intense, but so purposeful.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know it's not pathological. You know there's not something wrong.
Yes.
You know that it's supposed to be there, and you just have to kind of lean into it. And I'm there hyperventilating, just trying to get through this pain. And almost in a not so much panicky, maybe a little bit. Just kind of just like, oh God, didn't expect that type of contraction pain to come. I didn't know that's what's gonna feel like. Oh boy.
Right.
How long is this gonna last for? And I remember calling my doula sister on the phone, Joshi, and her just so calm. You know? like she didn't know that I was in the hospital giving birth to her niece. Her niece.
My niece, my sweet niece, who's pitter-pattering up on the floor above us.
Yeah, she was just so calm. And she was like, okay, take a deep breath in. And she just started coaching my breath. And it just helped to ground me and to center and to just slow everything down and to just be like, you're not just here in a hospital, whatever. You're here about to give birth to your child. Just slow everything down. This is all supposed to be happening. Just lean into it. Breathe. You got this breath. And she was coaching me and counting my inhalations and exhalations. And she was just... And we got through those contractions, and I was like, "Ooh, this girl is good." And I just realized how important it is to have people around you who are not gonna just make an anxious situation worse, or who can help you center yourself, and who can help you just be better and just
find your power,
and all that. Like, we need those people around us, you know.
So listeners, you know, when you're going through tough times, just remember to breathe. Sometimes it's just so simple as that. Not to say that our situations are not complex and there's no easy solution to a lot of things, but this is the one thing we do have control over is to breathe, center ourselves, and know that you're going to get through this. It's temporary. You are... You know, you were made for this. You know, we are strong and we can do a lot more than we think we can do. So, yes. Thank you for listening to this episode, very special episode with my sisters. We talked about many things, the experience of supporting a loved one going through a hard time, having a sense of confusion and not knowing what's happening, but also just the power of the sisterhood and of having community and help and early intervention. You know, for me, it was early intervention, knowing your family members, knowing when things go wrong and being able to just be there for them. Even if you don't know what's going on, even if you're scared, being present. And there's also so many tools we have in education and knowledge we have about mental health now. There's courses you can take about how to support someone going through a hard time, how to help someone having suicidal thoughts, how to help someone having a panic attack, but just being there and letting the person know you're not going anywhere, even if it's scary and you don't know what's happening. I think it was really important for me. Yeah.
I hid under the table, but I came out eventually.
Oh, man.
Another thing I was thinking about sharing is that in my practice as a doula, when I'm onboarding clients, I send them a series of intake forms. The first set asks about their physical health, and then later on it asks about their mental health.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of myself for separating those two things, because I think it also sends a signal to my clients that, oh yeah, consider your mental health as well.
Yeah.
The second form I share with them is a prenatal mood disorder risk assessment. And it's not diagnostic or anything. It's just designed to help people understand what kind of factors are at play, and so that they can also establish their support circle and find some resources to keep those on the back burner, so that postpartum, if they're experiencing intrusive thoughts or anxiety or feeling like they're not themselves, those kinds of things, that their partner, their doula, their midwife, whoever it is, knows what their plan is and can help them enact that.
Such a holistic approach. So perfect for this podcast, because you're looking at not just their physical health, but their mental health. We are whole people, you know. It's not just the physical that we care about. We care about things that have happened in the past, anxiety, depression, and the whole person. Thank you, sisters. Thank you for listening to episode 4. If this conversation was helpful to you and you'd like to hear more, please follow This is Freedom on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Podbean. Also share it with a friend. We want to share information, experiences, and resources that support the mental health and spiritual health of our listeners, particularly the African, Black, and Caribbean diaspora, and racialized and marginalized people. There's been a higher percentage of Black youth reporting suicide attempts and Black youth ages 15 to 17 experiencing the greatest increase in deaths by suicide. So our work to raise awareness of mental health struggles and solutions in the ABC community is needed now more than ever. Ways you can help this podcast. You can support this podcast as a sponsor, help with our production, or be a guest. Contact information to reach out is in the show notes and on our website, freedommentalhealth.ca. There you can donate to this important project. Any help you can give is so greatly appreciated. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Michelle Solomon. Take good care and see you next time.